doing a conference. And so he will be the first person we'll go with. And then after that, you could do the running show after that. But he's out there and there's a time difference and we want to get him back to his conference. Is that fine?
Sure.
Okay, it's almost that time, so I'm gonna jump and let you take it away, Kathy.
Actually, it's gonna be EB. Take me off the screen for now.
Take you off the screen?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I'm leaving this Zoom so that my video isn't accessible. So I'm gonna make you host.
Just in case anyone have any questions, we're going to do an introduction first, and then he's going to ask a panelist to tell their story from where they came from, first person, and what they're doing now positively in the community. And we have a speaking conversation, and questions will come in through the audience, and we'll close it out with Kathy.
It is 6 o'clock. We'll go ahead and start the program. We are live. Thank you, EB.
Good evening. Thank you, everybody, for joining back. Voting Access for All. We are here with our second chance month, and we have some great people on this panel today to talk about what they've done with their second chance. I am the Outreach Coordinator, Director, E.B. Jordan, and I am introducing Mr. Jason Colthrop. I hope I pronounced his name right, for WDIV Channel 4. He's an amazing news reporter and anchor. Take it away, Jason.
All right, thank you. I don't know about amazing, but the reporter part is correct. And just a little background of myself. I've been a reporter anchor at Channel 4 in Detroit for 8 years. Before that, I was in Lansing for 15 years. And in those 23 years now, makes me feel a little old, I've done several stories on guys who've gotten a second chance, guys, men and women, who, no matter what that is, whether they've been in prison or been wrongfully convicted or whatever the situation is, where they've gotten a second chance, and we watch them do good in the community and spread that message. And we're going to hear from one of those guys tonight, Larry Smith, who I've done a story with and worked closely with on some of the work he's done since he's gotten out. So we want to hear those stories. I'm going to introduce some people and hear their stories tonight. And we're going to start with Hakeem Crampton. Because you're on West Coast time, we want to let you go first tonight. Is that right? Do I have that right? We're going Hakeem first?
Yes.
All right.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you, EB, and thank you, Voting Access for All, for this opportunity to talk about second chance. There's nothing more important than having a second chance, if any of us as human beings. My name is Hakeem Crampton. I'm originally from Jackson, Michigan, currently out here in Phoenix, Arizona at the National Innocence Network Conference, which factors into a little bit of my story. Grew up, between Detroit, Lansing, and Jackson, all three cities. Got in a lot of trouble as a youth and was just looking for opportunities to really make it successfully in life. And didn't really find those opportunities as a young age in the crack era of the 80s. And I decided to move to Milwaukee in 1991 as an 18-year-old kid to kind of start fresh. And unfortunately, I got arrested there for an unsolved murder that I had no knowledge of, wasn't present at. Found myself in the courts facing a murder charge, a life sentence essentially. And I was found guilty of a crime I had no involvement in. I was sentenced to 45 years in prison. It was at that time that I decided to really focus on me, to educate myself and to find out why that I was wrongly convicted. And I wasn't asking a question of the courts, like, why did you arrest me and wrongly convict me? I was asking the question sociologically, like, what happened to me in the community that I come from, to where a young man like me, who had, all the great access to become great, I could have become great, and I slipped through some cracks. And so I wanted to answer that question. And so over the 15 years that I sat in prison in the state of Wisconsin, I asked the question of myself, who am I and who am I going to be whenever I win my freedom? Fortunately, the Wisconsin Innocence Project took up my case, and after 15 years, I won my freedom, and I returned back home to Michigan immediately. And I began working in the schools, in the juvenile homes between Ingham County, Jackson County, Wayne County, all over the state. And I began sharing my story about what happened to me. That propelled me into creating educational opportunities for students. I created Slam Lyrical Education, a 6-book textbook series teaching hip-hop based pedagogy, English language arts. And that took me across the state of Michigan into classrooms and schools and juvenile homes all over the state, focusing on violence prevention, specifically within our communities. That ultimately led to the attention of the governor of the state of Michigan, Governor Gretchen Whitmer, who in 2019 appointed me as a commissioner to the Michigan Indigent Defense Commission. My term actually expires this month, and I'm waiting to hear back if the governor will reappoint me for another 4 years as a commissioner on this commission, which oversees our entire public defense system. Every public defender office in the state of Michigan falls under our purview, and I am fortunate to be on the commission to oversee, to make sure that people really have an opportunity to receive a fair chance at trial. And so with my second chance, with having the opportunity to return home to my community, I have really been focused on making the most of it, giving back to my community, working with students, kids in the community, working with youthful offenders, as they're called. And that has really led me to, that original idea of focusing on myself to find out why. It led me to kind of answer that question. And so I kind of do know why and what happened sociologically to young kids like myself. And so that has been a great focus of mine, to center that, to tell the story of what happened in America, in Black America, in the 80s, the crack era, and what happened when support services, for example, that exist today with the rise of the epidemics that are plaguing us today, and that support didn't exist in the 80s. For the crack epidemic. And so those resources weren't available. And so there were kids like myself that was easily susceptible to falling prey to a lot of different sociological problems. And so I continue to do this work as a second chance, and everyone deserves a second chance. And so I'm making the most of it, and I'm excited to be on this call with you all. So definitely thank you for giving me an opportunity to present and speak.
Well, it's an absolutely unbelievable story, Hakeem. We appreciate you sharing it. In 15 years that just taken from you like that, I can't even imagine the frustration of that, and to be able to share that with other people and how you were able to deal with that. It's just incredibly empowering. So thank you for being here with us tonight and sharing it, being able to talk about it. Up next, why don't we move to Nick Buckingham? If Nick's ready, he was there a second ago. Okay, there he is. Nick, you ready to go?
Yeah, I'm back. I had to plug up before, computer has died. But yeah, welcome, peace. What up, though, as we like to say. My name is Nicholas Buckingham, campaign director, formerly campaign director, co-founder of Michigan Liberation. We're a statewide organization that focuses on leadership development of formerly incarcerated, directly impacted folks, policy changes specifically around prosecutors and Supreme Court. And then we also, I think like many other organizations, just do like a broader public education centered around like mass incarceration, specifically through a lens of abolition. And yeah, my backstory, most folks on this call went to prison for armed robbery, and I was paroled out in 2012. And I often tell this story of like, you know, when you come up against parole, you have this adrenaline of coming home, but you also hear these stories in the background about the felony stigma, hearing stories of like, you know, you're not going to finding employment is not going to be easy, or finding housing is not going to be easy. And so when I came home, I had the opportunity of actually finding a job within my first week. It was at Family Dollar, right? Yeah, going to blast them out. And it was at this time in the country where they was having this conversation about, you know, felon-friendly employment, banning the box, those type of things, and being like very honest about my incarceration, what it is that I have done. They granted me the job, felt really great. In about 3 weeks, they had a regional, like a corporate meeting where a lot of the big bosses that came in, and one of the corporate managers specifically came out and called me out about my conviction in front of the rest of the managers. And unfortunately, I was fired right there on the spot. So this was 3 weeks after, 3 weeks after being home, right, from doing the time. I get the job, and then within 3 weeks from that, I'm fired from there. And you know, like, there's this thing with parole, right? Like, we have to pay that parole supervision. We have to pay the person to supervise us on parole. And that's the one thing I just kept thinking about, was hearing the stories of, if you do not have the funds to pay your parole officer, then you have a high chance of going back into prison. And so I went back to what I was comfortable with. I picked the bag back up, and I started to sell. And when I was selling, you know, I was taking my proceeds and I was paying my parole officer. And one day they had an unexpected visit to my mother's house. I had a bag of weed already bagged up, a whole ounce with the scale. And the parole officer, you know, they called me, they violated me right there on the spot. And it was actually when I went and turned myself in, was the first time that I would hear from the other side of the law that they made the mistake, that they have messed up, that there were so many people that was coming in and out of the prison system because of the lack of resources, the lack of jobs, and the lack of housing, that these things need to really be addressed. So I was resentenced. I went to a reentry program in Detroit. I was resentenced 45 days. On my 47th day, I walked out of there. I walked into my very first college classroom at Oakland Community College. And since then, that was like 2014. I graduated with my associates in social work. Just last year, I just completed my master's out of University of Michigan. So the #1 school of social work in the country. And then integrating the skills of social work into the skills of organizing. The last piece I'll say is, you know, from the work around prosecutors into cash bail and looking, you know, to decarcerate MDOC. I think one of our proudest works that I can speak of, and is we're going into our 4th year, about to launch, is our Michigan Black Moms Bailout. You know, we raise our own money, no corporation, no foundation dollars, and we're able to go inside our courtrooms and our jails to bail out Black moms for Mother's Day, to connect them to resources. But the program has expanded, right? Because people have been throwing us those coins. So not only are we bailing out Black moms, we're also able to expand to like bail out anybody that we want. But because we have to keep a race class narrative around mass incarceration, it's important that, you know, we're highlighting the Black women that are being incarcerated, not only in our jails, but in our prison system.
Yeah, absolutely. Nick, thank you for sharing that. I would love to like just ask a bunch of questions after you guys talk about this stuff. It's just the reporter and me, but we'll get to the Q&A a little bit later. Let's keep it moving and meet our panelists first and let them talk about what they're doing. I'll move on to Anthony Scant. Did I say that right?
Happens every time, Jason. You good. You good. Just call me Tony. Shout out to Hakeem and Nick. Yeah, it's real, right? So I'm the Director of Policy and Program Operations for Nation Outside. Nation Outside is a grassroots organization made up of formerly incarcerated people. Our mission is to drive policy and practice reform to create transformative systems of support for people with criminal histories. So in a nutshell, we work on the back end of the carceral system to address the barriers that people with criminal histories face every day. So second chances is our bread and butter. This is what we're all about. Not only second, but third, fourth, fifth, whatever it takes, right? As a person who spent 20 years in the Michigan Department of Corrections from 1995 to 2015, I understand that sometimes a second chance ain't enough, right? Sometimes you need a third and a fourth chance to get your life right, right? And sometimes we throwing away people because they need that third and fourth chance. We losing human capital, right? What's interesting is what Nick said. He had heard that it was going to be difficult to get housing and employment. For me, right, when I was released in 2015, I was so optimistic that I was blind to how hard it was really going to be, right? I thought I was going to get out, like, I'm already got my plan, I'm willing to work, I'm smart, I'm finna hit the ground, I'm about to run. I hit so many walls in the first 6 months, like it was bananas. And I'm in Lansing, Jason. I hit wall after wall after wall after wall. I'm talking about temp agencies here in Lansing were like, oh, well, come and see us after you get off parole. But obviously my parole agent, right, he's like, you need to work now. Not only were they saying, come and see me after you get off parole, but we don't want to place a person with a violent conviction. And I'm a person with a violent conviction, right? I'm that person, right? That we always hear that we want to carve out, separate. But what I'm telling you is people with violent convictions that serve long times often never recidivate. They often never commit another crime, right? And we punish them the most severely for the rest of their lives. It's counterintuitive, actually, because I'm a father of a 6-year-old. I'm an author. I'm a small business owner. I started my lawn care company with one push lawnmower. It's worth about $60,000 now, right? I'm over a statewide organization. It doesn't make sense what we do. And so for Nation Outside, right, it's all about taking the leaders that you see on this screen, these amazing men, and highlighting what they've done, and to prove that not only are formerly incarcerated people valuable, but that we lose, right? We lose human capital by incarcerating people so long. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you, Tony. Appreciate that very much. I've got questions for you as well. I'm excited to see what kind of questions we get for people who are watching. If you have questions along the way, put them in the chat, and we'll ask those live as we go along, as we get through the introductions of our panelists. If you put it in the chat, we'll make sure it gets asked, and we'll get to each and every one of those. Let me move on to my guy, Larry Smith. I want to hear from you, Larry. Tell everybody your story. Larry, you got to make sure you unmute, Larry. Somebody probably muted you. If anybody wasn't going to unmute, it was going to be Larry, guaranteed. Larry, we still can't hear you, by the way. I see you talking. EB, can somebody unmute Larry manually? Because I wonder if he, oh, there he goes. All right, there we go.
Can you hear me now?
We got you, Larry. We got you. Yeah, we got you.
First and foremost, I want to give honor to God, who's the head of my life and the reason for my season, for me being here today. You know, I grew up on the city east side of Detroit. When I was a young man, I founded a gang in Detroit called the Chain Gang, and I became a leader, and I did a lot of criminal activity, and I taught criminal activity. And I'm responsible for a lot of guys in prison. I'm responsible for a lot of guys that's in wheelchairs and guys that's in the graveyard as well. And I have to accept my responsibility because I was a bad role model. And when you're leading, you're responsible for leading. And if I had been a better role model, then I could have did a lot of better things with our community. In doing so, I went to prison and I was sentenced to 2 natural life sentences without the possibility of parole for conspiracy and for murder, which I didn't commit, but they said that I was responsible because the guy said that I gave the orders and for being a shot caller. While in prison, I was running wild, and it took me 14 years. I knew all my life it was something missing out of my life, but I never knew what was missing out of my life. And after 14 years incarcerated, I discovered what was missing out of my life was me. I didn't have a purpose in life. And when I found my purpose, I changed my life and stopped hanging around guys I grew up with. And I went back to school, and I started doing things for the administration, like giving fundraisers for underprivileged kids, and so they can have school supplies and winter coats, and donate money to battered women's shelters. And, I got noticed a lot by a lot of people, and I started doing the things that I needed to do, just giving back to the community. In doing so, I got recognized also by, beforehand, let me tell you about Chance for Life that came into my life. It's an organization that came into the penitentiary and reach out to guys in penitentiary. And I was one of the guys that they reach out to. At first, I was a little discouraged about it because I didn't know what they were after. You know, you got people coming in from society, coming into a prison setting, telling people, hey, it's a better way of life. You know, we're going to give you a chance for life. And I was kind of, you know, discouraged about that. But after being involved and getting involved, especially into their programs, you know, critical thinking was my favorite. And I know that if we had critical thinking in public schools, I'd have made some better choices. So I'm here today to tell you about the things I've been doing since I came home, since I was blessed to come home. And praise God for Governor Rich Snyder. They gave me opportunity to come home. And I'm here now. And since I've been home, I'm very active in the ministry. I'm actually Reverend Larry Smith now. I marry people. Uh, I do funerals by committing people's graves to the, you know, to the ground. I help people get in treatment centers that's on drugs. I help people get in shelters that's homeless. I do all that I can out here because I'm a blessing to be a blessing. It was been a very positive thing for me to come back to society and give back. You know, I came back to the neighborhood and there was no more mailboxes, no more phone booths, no more alleys, and like the neighborhood looked like Beirut. Houses boarded up, houses burned out, vacant fields everywhere. What happened? I soon discovered that this was the result of what crack cocaine does to neighborhoods. You know, people they lost their jobs, they lost their minds, they lost their homes. And you had guys going in houses, vandalizing houses, tearing them up, and now they became condemned. And I said, man, we got to do something about this, you know. So we started boarding up houses where people were doing activities in and cutting down grass and lawns where people were getting drugged through the field and stuff, just doing any and everything that we could do. I had a group of guys that would help me to do these things, you know, and I try to reach back. But a lot of guys, they didn't want to change things. They want things to stay the same, you know. And I knew Jason from prison, and we stayed connected. And he helped me do a lot of things. He's been a blessing to me, he really has. This man here is like he always downplaying himself, but he's an extraordinary human being. He really is. And anything that's right that you know that he can assist in, he helps assist in. You know, he's been a plus in my life. And anytime a person come in your life and make your life better, it's a positive thing. But I've been blessed to be out here to do the things that I'm doing. I hear guys talking about how hard it was for them. They couldn't get jobs, this, that, and other. I was blessed in that area. People reach out to me. People embraced me, you know. Now I'm glad to say that I'm a mentor for Detroit Empowerment Program that we won through that we got through a grant. And I work with a very good brother, Brian Piccolo, you know. And it's a wonderful thing to be a co-worker of this brother that watched me grow up. They gave me opportunity. Hey man, we need you on board. You know, I'm still a mentor with and a core member with Chance for Life. And I'm also a minister in Miracles of Faith ministry under the great Theodore Peck Jr. And he teach me a lot of things. In fact, we did a funeral today on the west side. You know, we do a lot of things. People call on us for things, and I'm proud to be out here to help to give back. And that's all I got is to give back. You know, it's a wonderful thing. Everybody have their own opportunities. Everybody have their own goals. And I discovered the most important occupation out here is saving souls. You know, even if I had been a doctor, I could save your life on the operating table, but I definitely can't save your soul, you know. So I understand the things that my task is my tasks, and I'm doing everything that I can to give back. And that's just my task right now. I don't want to be long-winded, and I know I'm off the talk. Man, you're long-winded. I should tell people, man, I was shy when I was young. We don't believe that, you know, but it's a wonderful thing to be on the panel with these wonderful human beings that went through the trenches like I did and came out here and did better. You know, they wanted something better, so they done something better. And see, they had a choice too. The one brother said, "Hey, man, I went back to the VAAC. You know, I had to go back what I know. I refused to do that. You know, and I was offered that. I do not look good in orange jumpsuits. I just don't. Orange don't fit me at all. So when people came to me with that, man, don't even come to me with that. I did 44 years in prison. 44 hard years and 4 years out here on parole. And I'm glad to say I just been discharged from parole about 2 weeks ago. And I tell you what, when you're on parole, it's like having a visible choke chain around your neck. Any little thing you do, they can violate you and snatch you back in. So I was out here. I haven't even done no jaywalking out here. You know, I'm scared to death about going back to prison. You know, and it's like if I go back to prison, to be a motivation speaker. It won't be for any other reason. And then I'll be really scared even hearing them doors lock again on me. You know what we went through in prison: count time, chow time, yard time, lockdown, TV rooms closed, phones off. I'm on a big yard now. It ain't no more closing the yard. I can do whatever I need to do, and I can do the right things out here, and I made the decision to do the right things. That's my story.
Somebody commented just now, Larry, you are amazing. I agree. I love hearing you tell your story, Larry. It's always inspiring to me. And I think one of the things I like the most is how you're doing. A lot of the things you're doing includes marrying people, and it's true for everybody out there. Larry, the next time I get married, Larry's gonna do the officiating. I'm just kidding.
My pleasure.
It's just a joke. It's just a joke. Hey, I'm not getting married again. But all right, so nobody's laughing at jokes tonight. Okay, that's good. Just good to know. We'll just get it out there. We got one more. I believe we have just one more panelist to tell their story, and that's James Thomas. Welcome, sir.
Welcome. Good evening to everyone. Thank you, and it's a great honor to be part of this panel of distinguished human beings that I know personally. My story, I was a young man, grew up in the city of Detroit. At the age of 15, I was sentenced to first-degree murder in 1987. I served 31 years. Out of that 31 years, I served 14 in solitary confinement. During that point in my life, I actually, sometimes I say I needed that point to sit down for a minute while I was incarcerated. Because if I didn't have that opportunity to sit down, I don't think I would be the man I am today. It allowed me to just sit down and really think and say what I want my life to be. I didn't want to be defined as a murderer at 15 years old for the rest of my life. So during that time, I was solitary confinement. I began to plan, began to prepare myself, and begin the process of changing my thinking, how I seen the worldview. Once I was released to level 5, I was sent to a lower level. That's when I met up with quite a few older friends that I've known since I was inside the system. And one thing they told me when I came down, prison system was no longer the same prison system. And at this time our focus should be gaining our freedom, not being the toughest men on the prison yard. And fortunately, God bless his soul, a good friend of mine, Little Bay, was a great mentor and friend of mine, passed away, but he was one of those brothers that whispered in my ear, like, listen, the focus have to be gaining your freedom. You spend a lot of time being wild, acting crazy and fool. Now show people your intelligence and what you're really made of. So from that point on, after that conversation, when I met him at Macomb Correctional Facility, I completely changed my thought process, the way I moved. I began to really look at my circle of friends and say, okay, who focus on gaining their freedom? It's easy to act a fool on the prison yard, but how many of us getting our education? How many of us contributing back to our community? So I got involved in the National Lifers of America Association, got involved with the organization Chance for Life. I've done a lot of great work with them. They've done a lot of great work with me and helped me out a great deal. And several other organizations I was involved in, University of Michigan Inside Out under Professor Laura Lampert. So I had opportunity to have the college experience right inside the system with students. I think they brought like 15 actual University of Michigan Dearborn students in to participate in that college program. So that was a great experience because I realized at that point I can compete to that college level. And that was important to me because when I came to the system, I could not read or write. When I left the street, I had a seizure attack and it shot the right side of my brain. I no longer could read or write, but through my dedication and commitment, through other men who I met in the system who worked on me and helped me gain that mobility in my brain, I started back learning how to read, write, spell, math, and everything, and became good at it. So I always give honors to the brothers who worked with me and helped mold and shape me, to change how I thought in my behavior and think, let me know that I can be a better human being than being someone that's violent, because it's easy to be violent, So fortunately, like many other juvenile lifers, I was fortunate to gain my release in April the 17th of 2017. I gained my freedom. I think it'll be 6 years this month. Fortunately for me, I had somewhat of a red carpet because I had an organization, Chance for Life, that kind of laid the red carpet out for me. They employed me as soon as I came home. You know, I knew a lot of other great people like Anna Combs, who helped me out a great deal. She's with Sato. A lot of people that I built great relationships on while I was incarcerated. When I came home, they kind of wrapped themselves around me and understood that, I had been gone since I was 15 years old. And the world I knew at 15 was not the world I was coming back out to. So I was fortunate to have those people in my life. But even though as fortunate I was, I still realized that it was a lot of problems with brothers and sisters coming from incarceration. I seen situations not having affordable housing. I seen food insecurity. I seen a lot of things, and it bothered me. Even though I didn't have to face a lot of those things. I seen other men and women coming on who I knew was facing those challenges. Fortunately, through my work with Chance for Life, I was able to assist many of them that came through the Chance for Life doors and help them get over the barriers, help many of them get employed. And I woke up one day and started my own organization called Rise of Sun Inc. And my commitment was to address food insecurities in the city of Inkster, which I reside in, the city of Detroit and surrounding communities. So currently, right now, I'm feeding about like 500 families a week. Which is fortunate, through the partners I have and the people that have witnessed my commitment and loyalty to the Inkster community, Detroit community. I'm able to do that work. Every year I do an annual book bag giveaway. Doing it just last weekend, we had a great deal thing with the children. I do a big Easter thing with the community of City Inkster and Detroit. I was fortunate to be appointed as a commissioner on the Inkster Housing Commission, so I work in that area with housing the city of Inkster. And so there's a lot of things I do involved in. Early on when I came home, I had the great opportunity. Nation Outside gave me a great opportunity to be the director of the regional director of the Detroit chapter. I was working with brother Kevin Harris at that time. We was doing some great work at that chapter in the early stage of Nation Outside. But when you think about second chances, I have been fortunate and blessed to get second chance from many different arenas. And I think it's because of the work that I do in the community, whether it's addressing homelessness, food insecurity, our seniors, violence. I'm boots on the ground. I wear a suit, but I be boots on the ground in the trenches every day as an advocate. I use my voice because I'm always reminded that I left a lot of good men behind me. And for me, I can never forget that. So I always try to use my voice in any of my resources, try to help them or be up in Lansing, be at legislative office, beating on the doors. And through that advocacy work that I do with the campaign of fair sentence of juveniles, the national lifers of the National Lifer Council of Juveniles, I've been fortunate. Other opportunities have come to my doorstep, and I've been blessed. My Nation Outside family has been great to me. My brother Nick and my Michigan Liberation family has been great to me. It just created opportunities for me to continue to build, continue to use my talent, my skills to be able to help our brothers and sisters that's locked up. So second chances are important. Sometimes I sit back when I think of the great work that's being done by the former incarcerated communities, I be in shock because never in history have we really seen this. When you see the men and women come home out of the state of Michigan and the ways we have came home and see the work and the commitment that brothers and sisters have made to rather change laws, help our community any type of way, it's amazing to see that type of work. You'd be like, damn, is this real? Is this a movie I'm really in? But so for second chance for me, it's been great. And like I say, my Nation Outside family, I give all honors to because they have blessed me and continue to bless me and have put me in a position where I can do some great things. And my Chance for Life family, like I said, they have carried me and mentored me. Mr. Tom Adams, Jessica Taylor have been my greatest mentors and prepared me for success in the future, And so thank you for having me on this panel. And again, I give honors to all the brothers and sisters on this call and on this panel. And let's continue to do the work.
Yeah, and you are doing great work, James. We appreciate that and appreciate you sharing your story. I believe I got through all of our panelists, unless I missed anybody on there, EB, but chime in if you're not. I want to jump into the chat, jump into some questions. One of the ones in there from Audrey Anderson is talking about recidivism. And I know Tony and Nick kind of touched on this. And I want this to be like a free flowing conversation. So if anybody has a thought, feel free to jump in. I'm going to start this part though with Tony and Nick. Let me go Nick first. When it comes to recidivism, you guys were talking about just, you want to get that second chance, third chance, fourth chance. And you run up against barriers. And we've seen the state over the years talk about, there are programs in place now to reduce the recidivism rate. We're making that easier for people. But once you get out, and like you said, you had a job and you immediately got fired. How frustrating was that, number one? And in a situation like that, it had to be easy to want to just give up on everything. And like you said, you went back to the bag eventually, but that had to be very frustrating and almost make you want to give up on, rehabilitating at that point.
Yeah, no, that's real. I think one, I think like we talk about second chance through like this funny, jargony type way. I think many people need a chance, right? I think many folks that go in and out of the prison system, especially if they're in their younger years, are often not, they don't have a chance of like really surviving. And so it's the mechanisms, it's like those survival skills that come up and they're often criminalized, and that's what lead us into prison, right? And so like, yeah, coming out, getting that first job, losing that first job is frustrating, but because I've heard those stories all my life, because I've seen that to be the proof with other people that were coming out, right? Like I never met before, the Tony G's and the Hakeems. Like my guys didn't come out and get the good jobs. They came out and they went right back to the streets. And it was two individuals, and I lift them up every time, but there was two individuals that before I left prison, they told me to look for. One was Shaka Senghor and the other one was Yusuf. And it was these two guys was like, yo, they're breaking barriers, right? They're doing things that the stigma is holding me back, but I'm watching them excel. And it's like, yo, how are you still excelling through the stigmas? And we're all going through it. Neither one of us can go out and get a house right now because we're all still felons. But one of my guys sat on Oprah couch. The other one is giving book bags away to half of Detroit every year, right? He's building up his own community. So I was, taking that frustration and remembering what some of the old heads on the yard was telling me, who to look for, who to go behind, who to follow behind. And I did just that. And even today, right, like with all of the successes, with a master's degree, with a fast growing organization, with all of the wins, to be a felon, right? And I know like the automatic expungement thing has went in effect. Not all of us get to experience an automatic expungement, right? And so the frustration is still there. If my organization, Michigan Liberation, happens to fail today, right? This is my bread and butter. Like I'm one paycheck away from going back into the streets. And I get it, like, yo, I don't never want to go back to prison, but I got 3 children, I got a life. And that's what my survival skills are telling me, right? It's not about like, I want to be a bad person. It's living and surviving against the tools of white supremacy, which number one is poverty, right? It's like, I can get as many degrees as I want. But the way society is set up and the way the felony stigma is set up is that some of us don't belong at a decision-making table. And that's not because of us, that's the rhetoric that's coming off of society, right? We see in so many of our guys that have this knowledge, something J-Mo just said, there's no rehabilitation in prison, period. Let's get that out of there, right? No matter, you can bring MPRI, all of that into a space. The moment you have to wake up and go to sleep in this constant fear of being incarcerated, of watching your back, that's not rehabilitation at all, right? But it's groups of people that's on the yard, like the Nation of Islam, like the Moore Science Temple of America, like the Milanis, that have played a role in many of our reentries, right? I can't give my successes of coming out to the prison system, but the men that I had to build this broken bond with, right, on the yard, is the men that got me prepared to step into my leadership, to step into my glory. But every single day, like, we can't get it twisted. one stroke of the pen from the governor can wipe all of this away from us. Our organizations, if we end up ending mass incarceration, that is a great thing. But if we don't get the felony up off our back, many of us going to be jobless and homeless still, right? So it's like this push and pull. Even traveling and going to school, you know, people constantly tell me like, oh, congratulations on your master's degree. It was hard as hell to get inside U of M. The first time I tried to get in, they wanted me to bring my transcripts. No way in hell will you ever be able to create an image of me without me telling my story first, right? And so I didn't do that. Going into my undergrad, it was very hard to get into field placements and internships. It was a time where my degree was in jeopardy because wouldn't nobody accept me as a violent criminal into their institutions to either work with kids or to work with old folks or whatever. Even like traveling, I can't go to Canada. So if I'm on a 75 and I don't get off that one little strip that goes into the bridge, guess what? Homeboy is clapped right here, and I'm not going to get that same opportunity that you would get, Jason, of, you know, going, oh, I made a mistake and I turn around. They're going to want to run a background check. They're going to want to see that I've been to prison. I have a FBI number, and then it just spirals out of control, and then that fear tactic come right back in, right? Some of us have a fear of seeing the police. I don't. But I have a fear of coming in contact where my life can be taken away from the streets and the family and placed right back into incarceration.
Yeah, you make a great point too. I mean, a lot of us, you look back on some of the decisions everybody's made when you're 16, 17, 18, and they're always setbacks, but you know, I mean, the facts are the facts. The lighter your skin, the less of the chance it's going to end up ruining your life or costing you years off your life. Like you said, where do I want to go? Tony, let me bring you in real quick just to talk about, as we talk about recidivism a little bit, in your mind, what do you think needs to change to break down those barriers Nick is talking about that stop people from, you know, advancing, whether it's getting education or getting a job and staying on the straight path?
That's a good question, Jason. And shout out to Nick. That was amazing, right? I think, you know, to steal a phrase from Hakeem, right? We got to end perpetual punishment, right? And let me explain. Like, first, in Michigan right now, we got the lowest, according to the MDOC in the state of Michigan, we got the lowest recidivism rate in state history, right? That's based on a 3-year average, right? But it's important that we understand when we talk about what recidivism is, right? Recidivism is just somebody returning to prison, right? And so for us, right, I'm not looking at recidivism. I'm looking at outcomes for people having a better life, right? The fact that somebody doesn't go back to prison doesn't mean they're doing well. I know men and women who haven't been back to prison, who live in a hotel right now, today, pay $600-700 a week to live there, but they haven't recidivated. So under the DOC definition, they're a success. They're not a success the way I define it. The way I define success for formerly incarcerated people is that they have a real chance at success. Real chance. Not just going back to prison, but a real chance. I'm talking about like Nick, like Hakeem. That's how I define success. Not just not going back to prison. I think that's the lowest way we can look at re-entry. And that's the way we're defining it now. People don't go back to incarceration. We need to change that whole way of looking at re-entry, right? We need to start asking ourselves, how do we create pathways for people to have great outcomes in life and not just that, oh, they didn't get locked up again. That's my statement.
Yeah, I hear you on that too. And it's important to hear. We're not distracted at all by the fact that you're wearing a Red Sox hat either, then they just swept the Tigers. We're looking past that, so don't worry. They lost today, by the way. Don't think we didn't notice that. Hey, Hakeem, I know your time is precious on this as well, but I wanted to bring you back in just as being the person who was wrongly convicted, wrongly incarcerated, that's on this panel. Talk about, and I'm sure you've gotten this question before, the frustration of losing 15 years like that and how you're able to take that emotion. I don't know how you handle it, but able to turn that into good and get on with your life at some point.
Yeah, that's a great question. And one of the things that's sticking out today while I'm down here at the National Innocence Network Conference is the number of people that are wrongly convicted every year. We learned today from National Innocence Network that upwards near between 8 and 10% of convictions are actually wrongful convictions. That's a huge number considering how many hundreds of thousands of people get convicted each year. When you take that between 8 and 10%, we're actually talking, tens of thousands of people being wrongly convicted each year. For a kid like me that was 18 years old, it took me 5 years to process that. I was still a child, still maturating, still developing. So it took a while to process what that really meant for my future, although I could envision the fact that they had took my life for 45 years and I really didn't know when I was ever going to go home again. So it's important to understand that the system, and especially in the previous question, and I want to connect them to recidivism, the system by design needs to really, really reevaluate itself. Now, people like us, we are people with expertise, having gone through the system. We, brothers like, what's my brother named Larry? The brother did 40-something years in prison. What has changed in the way in which we operate the criminal justice system since the time he went in? Right? Not much has really changed. So therefore, the opportunities for successful outcomes mirror what the criminal justice system looks like. There is no real rehabilitation. Right? So without real rehabilitation, people are coming back home not habituated. They haven't acclimated themselves to life from even within inside, to let alone come to the outside, because the inside is not an appropriate lifestyle. Right? You cannot successfully manage a developing life from inside prison, even though some people successfully are able to do so. And so the way in which the system operates itself, we have to begin inserting our voices as the experts in the room to say, this is what has been happening to people like us with the system. And this is how we avoid the system continuing to harm people the way in which it does. So for people like me that's wrongly convicted, it's one of the most frustrating elements of life for us, to have our lives taken. And most times not even to be apologized for it, nor compensated for what has happened to us. So how do people like us transition back successfully without recidivating, right? Just because we went in innocently doesn't mean that we come out and the path is, open and laid for us to go and just rejoin life. We face the same exact barriers, the same psychological, mental, emotional barriers that others face.
Yeah, we had a story of a young man who was wrongfully convicted, and his name escapes me now, had no criminal record before he was wrongly convicted. And then when he was finally released, and it was quite a bit of time, I want to say 10, 12 years, then started falling back into committing crimes, was never a criminal to begin with. But because of that incarceration, it took him down the wrong path and he just couldn't get off it. And it's totally understandable, right? Larry, let me bring you in real quick. When you hear these guys talking about you can't rehabilitate in prison, or it's difficult. I know you did, but the difference here being you were kind of there for the long haul. And I know you said it took you a good 13, 14 years before you could see the light, see the difference on how to make a change. What was the turning point for you to be able to make inroads while you were on the inside? And because I know that's when you became a pastor and started helping and mentoring young men.
It was the spiritual organizations that's in facilities like Morris Science Temple of America, great guys in that organization. Also the brothers that's with Faircon, the brothers over there that come to the nation. You had other brothers in there that was in organizations, and they would breathe on you, and a lot of times you didn't want to hear it, but when it's right, you got brothers that's walking inside them institutions that's holding down things. I mean, as far as keeping killings down, taking you to your house when you drunk, disarming you when you finna go do something stupid. These guys was mentors themselves, and being around these kind of guys, you kind of embrace these guys and the things that they did, A lot of things would be happening in prison if you didn't have for those spiritual groups, including the Christians as well. You know, they all come together. They all come together and they was all striving to do the right things. And you're going to be better when you come out of prison, or you're going to be worse. No, there's no such thing as rehabilitation, Jason. And I'm going to tell you that after doing 44 years. You got to make your own changes within yourself. You got to be willing to make a change, you know, and you got to tell yourself, I used to go to the hole all the time for my homeboys. They come get me and we rumbling, you know. And the last time I went to the hole, I looked in the mirror and I said, I deserve better and I want better. So when I came back at the population the last time, I didn't go to the hole no more. I went to school. I went to school to better myself because it was my opportunity to make a change. It wasn't nothing that they taught us in prison. It was just what you latch on to. I'm gonna become a better person. Even though I had 2 natural life sentences, and I left 4 daughters out here that I couldn't be out there for. I had one daughter write me a letter and told me I liked it being fresh and I appreciated what you done for me when you was out here, but I needed my daddy home with me. You know, that 13-year-old girl at that time taught me a lesson. There's nothing more important than putting your time into a person. And that's what we got to do out here. We got to put time into these young men that haven't touched that fast money, that's out there with them sacks. And you trying to tell them, don't destroy the community, don't destroy your people. They don't want to hear that. I'm not finna stop doing this and go work at McDonald's. So you got to catch those guys that's admiring those guys down the street, looking at them with their fast cars, their fancy clothes, they fresh gym shoes. We got to swoop them up now. And we got to show them a better way. We got to talk to them and put in time with them. When I ran classes in a facility for Chance for Life, the most effective I was on the yard with guys, not in the classrooms, but I took time after class to walk the yard with them and talk with them. And them men would lean on my shoulder, cry on my shoulder, and share things with me that I know that they wouldn't share with anyone else, about their family ties and how they wanted to impress their dad and how their dad went in their life and how their dad didn't trust them and how they didn't think they was going to never be anything, you know. And them guys will latch on to you. We taught parenting from prison, in prison. And it was really a successful program, you know, for a man to come in. I had guys say, man, I love my daughters. I do. I said, you don't love your daughters. Because if you love your daughters, you wouldn't take a chance to come in here and leave them. I left my daughters out there. You know why I left them out there? Because I was selfish. I didn't think about what people that really love me, what was going to happen to them. I only thought about myself. And I didn't realize that until God put me in a place to get his attention. And I started thinking, how stupid was I to come into prison? And I came up in a home with a mother and father, loving mother and father. But I loved the streets and I loved what I was doing. And I loved the pedestal people put me on. Most of the things that I got in trouble for, Jason, it was because what people wanted me to do and what they expected me to do. Oh, here comes Smitty. It's on now. And I fall right into that. And I had kids, I had babies out there that I left out there. And all my babies are not proud because, like, you know, they're angry. You've been gone all these years. You ain't been here for us, you know, and it's hard. It's a hard situation to put that gap back and build that relationship back with your own blood, you know. It's a difficult situation. But as far as going back to prison, if you put in your mind that you're not going to go back to prison, and you're going to find the right things to do. And I don't care what it takes. Like the brother said, he know people that's living in motels, $600-700, you know, a week. I know brothers staying in vacant houses, hooking up the poles and hooking up their own heating stuff in there because they don't have no place to go. And they be angry. They're angry out there. But we need to help these people out there. If I had some serious money, that's all I would do. I would go and get some of these vacant houses, these vacant buildings, and remodel them and put people in that is homeless, put people in that need help, people that need a place to go from prison. You'll be surprised of the people that don't have a place to go from prison. They got to go to Operation Get Down or some kind of halfway house, you know, and they're angry about that. And they get out here, they can't get no jobs. And when they do get jobs, you know, they're not the jobs they want or they're not making enough money. You in good health, work 2 jobs. Work at McDonald's and work at the car washer. Do whatever you need to do, you know. But it takes time. And being patient, that's a praise itself, being patient. And most people, I ain't got no patience. You got to be patient. Could you imagine what it would have been like if I hadn't been patient?
Yeah.
If I hadn't believed that something good was going to happen to me, if I hadn't had the faith that something good was going to happen to me, 2 natural lives without the possibility of parole, that's a death sentence. You know, you can, no matter what you do. So I feel wherever I'm at, I'm gonna be the best that I can be. And I'm gonna give back from where I sit. And that's what I did. And once I come out here, I'm doing the same thing out here, Jason. And I'm doing it on a bigger and a better scale now. I applaud you guys. I mean, I commend you guys for the thing. And the brother up here that got a master's degree came out here and like, man, I'm gonna make this happen. I don't care how many doors they close in my face. I'm gonna still get through these doors. Man, look, man, I don't have nothing but I don't have nothing but honor for you. These are things that we need to do. These are things that we need to do. And we need to be an example to other people. But there's some babies out here. I want to start the organization called Save the Babies. We can save some of these young men. We can't save everybody. Because some of them guys that touch that fast lane and getting that fast money, they don't want to hear about stopping making so much money a week and going to McDonald's, talking about hold a pickle and hold a lettuce. They don't want to hear that, you know? And they, guess what? They'll shoot you down if you get in their way. So you got to know how to talk to these people. You got to know how to approach these people. But you got to put in the time. And that's the most invaluable thing that we give another human being is our time.
Yeah. A lot of good stuff there, Larry, right?
Amen.
And I need to ask you to make sure you come out of your shell and not be so shy the next time we ask you something.
Thank you, Jason.
I'm getting some questions in the chat. Anybody can jump here. I want to get James in here. And then with the moments we have left, I just want to make sure everybody has a chance to address anything that they feel hasn't been talked about. But James, let me bring you back in and you can either answer this question that's in the chat or just talk about something you think hasn't been addressed. But the question's from Nadia. It says, how should we define those who have changed and are making positive impacts inside and outside due to personal growth and learning?
How should we define it?
Define those.
I would say how you define those, we are human beings. We made errors and judgments as young men and women. Now we home and we contribute to members to our society. Many of us are taxpayers, law-abiding citizens, community leaders, so I think you defined us, we no different than no other hardworking human being. We get up every day, work hard, pay our bills, pay our taxes, try to make sure our communities are safe. It's just, I think that's the only way you can define us. We no different than no other human being. We just made errors and judgment in our young lives, and now we are here having that second chance, having the ability to be able to contribute to our communities. And when you think of just rehabilitation, it's about transformation, a person transforming how they think. If you don't change how you think, your behavior is not going to change. And for most of us, we are evidence that our thought process changed. We begin to critically think. We begin to, most important, understand our value as human beings. And once you know your value as a human being, you know your contributions to humanity. So, we just average citizens in our communities.
Yeah, I'd say even more than that, better than average citizens, people, human beings, just the guy that's right next to any other guy, just trying to, live his life, raise his kids, and live a great life. Let me open it up to anybody who has a thought, anything we haven't discussed that anybody's thinking about that you think is important that we get out there.
I know it's a couple, Jason, a couple comments and questions around second look. And I know there's a press conference on the 19th. It's a huge deal. And this is what I'm gonna say without going into the policy aspect of it. For a person who grew up in prison, I left a lot of amazing people behind. People think I'm smart. I know some geniuses that are still held in our prison. People deserve a second look. This makes all the sense in the world, right? It's absurd that we hold people as long as we do in our prison system. It's insane, right? We need to take a look at that.
Yeah, if I could add to that too, before I got a second look here, I just met a gentleman down here whose cousin is in federal prison. He's been there 22 years, and he has 100 more years left. He just finished his armed robbery sentence. Now he's serving 100 years of penalty enhancements, meaning that he received 25 years per firearm for the 4 charges he had. He robbed 4 banks 20-something years ago. He did use a firearm in each of those bank robberies, but he was sentenced to 20 years in prison for bank robbery for all 4 of those bank robberies. His sentence comes with a 25-year enhancement on each charge. So now he has 100 years on top of his 20 years that he already served, and he literally has no chance to get out of prison unless, for example, there's a second look possibility in his case, and he's helped many other people get out under second chance look legislation across the country, and he himself is still stuck there. So this is important for us to look at cases to see, is it appropriate for us to sentence someone for 100+ years, basically more than a life sentence, and haven't even committed a lifeable offense?
And that is unbelievable to hear. Anybody else want to jump in? Nick, I see you nodding your head. Is there anything you wanted to add before we finish up here?
Yeah, no, I think what Tony and Hakeem was saying around second look is real, and especially for folks here in Michigan. I think we can go down an hour with statistics of what's happening at MDOC. There is a big push right now, and this is for folks really have to understand narrative. There's a big push to look at how cash bail campaigns are going to say if we end cash bail, there will be all this crime and stuff happening on the streets. There's no statistics to prove that, other than what the individual organizations are doing. And the same thing with second look. I'm hearing, from the opposite end of the table that, we start to let out these quote unquote violent folks that they're going to come on the streets and run amok and everything else. Those are narratives that are not created from our community. There's a person by the name of Glenn E. Martin. Many of us know who he is. He says those who are closest to the problem, closest to the solutions, but furthest from the resources of power. When we talk about the solutions, it's us. It's us, the ones that's been formerly incarcerated or still incarcerated, to say, doing 20 years did not help me. Doing 15 years only caused more trauma in my life. Doing 10 years only caused more violence within my life. I did 10 years and I seen more Black men die in prison than I did in the streets, right? And that's from the east side of Detroit. And that's something to really think about when we're looking at the prison system. 95% of those that are incarcerated are coming back to your community. It's only a small percentage that are going to do life and actually die behind bars, and that's horrible. But 95% of these folks that are in these institutions with no rehabilitative programming, the little schooling program that they do have in there, the little bit of skilled trades programming that they do have in there, the little bit of self-help programming that they do have in there, that's not enough for that full population. So if we're locking people up and we're treating them less than animals, I just went to see DC and I seen people carrying dogs like they were babies and would not carry a Black baby out of poverty, right? If you're going to lock somebody up and treat them worse than animals and strip away the resources, what do you expect to come back into your community? And so I'm encouraging folks at second look, this legislation is coming up. If you don't know formerly incarcerated folk, Michigan Liberation, Nation Outside, these are 2 organizations that organize formerly incarcerated folks. If y'all want to hear stories, y'all want to see the success of folks, come to one of those organizations. If you don't know about us, then look at Just Leadership USA. That's a national organization that has touched thousands of formerly incarcerated folks. And there are thousands of stories, thousands of our stories that people need to hear of why we are saying people need a second look. We need to decarcerate, our jails and our prisons. And we really need to look at some of these draconic laws of how we're locking folks up and start to make those policy changes.
Can't say it better. And Angela put it in the chat for anybody who's interested and wants to get involved that's watching this right now or will watch it later on YouTube. I'll read it just in case they don't have access to the chat later on. But Second Look Community Action coming up next week, next Wednesday, April 19th. At the Kelly Cawthorn office in Lansing. It's 208 North Capitol Avenue, 3rd floor. It's in Lansing. 8:30 a.m. is the community rally on the sidewalk areas. Bring your signs, get involved. 9 a.m. they have a press conference there with State Senator Stephanie Chang. At 10 a.m. There's a literature drop to the House and Senate members. Carpooling is available for people that want to go to this. All you have to do is register by the end of the day on Friday, April 14th. So tomorrow, if you can register, get involved with that, you can make a huge difference next week in Lansing. And that's where you got to take the fight to, the people that are making the laws, and hope they are going to see this. And the simple fact of the matter is this is usually something that is a little more doable when you have a Democratic majority. And guess what? There's a Democratic majority in the state, in the House and the Senate in the state of Michigan right now for the first time in 40 years. So everything we're hearing tonight, everything you guys are talking about has a real chance to see some action, actually get some legs and make a difference. But I just got to tell you, listen to this, and I've heard Larry tell his story a lot of times, but listening to you guys, Hakeem, Tony, Nick, James, it's just incredible to hear you talk about this. And all I can do is applaud everything you guys have done and the difference you're making with people that whose lives you've touched, the people you know, the people who are watching that are just inspired by you. So thank you again for everybody sharing their story. I still want to open it up one time. I don't know, EB, if you want to say anything or jump in, if anybody wants to add anything before we tidy this up.
Yeah, we had Knuckles that slid in at the end. You have, you're not going to talk, Knuckles? Can you hear us?
Been here for a whole hour. Literally.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it came up under my name. I couldn't figure it out.
Oh, I didn't see. I saw you in there twice. I'm sorry, dude. Jump in there and tell us your name, your story, and anything you want to add to the conversation that's been going on.
I think everything that needs to be said has already been said and eloquently put. I will touch down on the recidivism rate for people who have served over 20 years. The recidivism rate is 0.0 something. So we have the lowest recidivism rate in the world. I will say that, and we have the highest success rate in the world. Why? Because when people like us end up in prison serving those life sentences, because I'm a former juvenile lifer myself, served 48 years. When people giving these sentences, and it don't have to be lifers, because some of us taught some guys that's not lifers. So I always tell people this story. If you gave me a second chance, and I served 28 years, and I was taught by this guy behind me, why can't he get a second chance? He the one taught me to be the man that I am today. And he's got a longer history of mentoring and being an exemplary individual, an exemplary prisoner, and trying to reach out to guys and mentor to guys. But yet, you give me a second chance and not those guys. So we left a lot of guys behind who taught us to become the. First of all, let me say this. In prison, I went in prison. Me and J-Mo and some of us went in prison at an early age. We were not men. The only example of men that we could look at was those older guys that we thought was men because of their age. Some of them turned out to be men, and some to help us become the men that some of them even imagined themselves being. So, success rate, we come out here. I came out here personally, and I knew J-Mo. J-Mo got in contact with me. I remember Nick. Nick got in contact with me 7 days after I was out. And I remember Smitty. I knew Gant Bay, so just seeing some of these guys, I knew I was coming out here to be successful, hands down. I had no thought of going back, doing anything that would take me back, or even looking back. I don't even want to look back behind me right now while I'm sitting in my truck. I don't even want to look back right now. So, but just seeing these guys, I remember I was at Jackson College, and I had not even seen Tony, and I was speaking on a panel, and Tony knew who I was, but I didn't even see him too good, and he commented on something I said. And from then on, I learned of the work that he do, and it just made me proud. This is what inspired me, man. This inspired me. Right now, I'm in a neighborhood where I give out clothes all the time. I have a almost a store full of clothes that I just give out to a lot of the prostitutes, a lot of the guys around here walking around using drugs, homeless. Throughout the winter, throughout the summer, I feed them, cook the food by my own hands. Because as Smitty eloquently put earlier, listen, when you blessed, you being blessed not for yourself. You being blessed to give the blessing away. It's not yours till you give it away. It don't mean nothing. If you told me you a basketball player and I've been knowing you all these years and I never seen you hit the court, you got to bless somebody with your skills. So then somebody can say, yeah, he cold on that court. So when I say I'm blessed, it means nothing if I don't share it with anybody. So what we do and what I do personally is I try to share my blessings with everybody. J-Mo allowed me to come help him in an Inkster, and he didn't even know that I went to Inkster High School and went to Inkster High School with the mayor. He didn't even know none of this. I knew both mayors. And J-Mo asked me to come out there 4.5 years ago. That was a great opportunity. Nick asked me to come on board in Michigan Liberation 4.5 years ago. That was a great opportunity. I'd have been just messing with Michigan Liberation. I'd have been a state after state and different country, and it's just been it's been a very wonderful experience. But the most important thing about it that makes me smile and makes me happy is that we helping so many people along the way. We not just doing this because we given the opportunity. We doing this because we see the effect that we can have on the people who deserve the second chance because we were given that second chance. That's all I got to say, because I could take up the whole thing by myself. EB didn't tell y'all that, but I take up the whole time. But I just feel blessed, man, because listen here, man, with a life sentence at 17 years old and coming from the background that I came from, sometimes it brings tears to my eyes because people don't really understand. They don't really understand that I didn't have to be here. But for whatever reason, I didn't commit the crime I went to prison for. I was framed by Detroit Homicide Section. Arlie Levere was the sergeant. So I didn't even commit the crime. I committed worse crimes, but I didn't commit this crime. And I say that then, I say that now, but I was sent to prison to be reserved and preserved, to come out better. And it didn't rehabilitate me. Prison didn't do nothing about rehabilitating me. I rehabilitated me because I started listening to all the thoughts that brothers was placing in my head throughout my time in prison. And I started learning my lessons from those thoughts. And I started a nonprofit organization called the Great Minds Project, paying homage to all of those brothers and female prison guards, to my family, female family members who came to visit, paying homage to all of them who taught me to be the man that I am today. And they allowed me to stand on their shoulders to see a freedom that some of them may not see. So now I come out here and I mentor to all of you. I mentor to, I don't care who it is. You could be 90. I don't care. If you need some help, I'm trying to help you. So I come out here to mentor and allow people to stand on my shoulders to see a freedom that some of them may not see because so many people out here locked up. That's all I got to say, man. I appreciate this opportunity.
Good stuff, Knuckles. I love it. Love that story. Love the passion you have. One quick follow-up. It was 80 degrees today. How come you didn't get that hard top off?
I've been wanting to take it off, but I was downtown in the middle and the police was behind me. And I can't just pull over and take the top off. And then I want to turn the sounds up.
You don't look suspicious at all. They'll give you the benefit of the doubt. That's good.
Jason,
go ahead, Larry. Smitty,
Jason,
jump in.
before you get off, I want to say that with all these men here, they discovered a very important thing, that a life without love is an empty life. And everything that we were blessed with, it wasn't for us to keep, but it's for us to share.
There you go. Good stuff.
That's
I love
right.
if we end it there, that's a great way to end it. EB, I'm going to send it back to you. What else we got to do here?
We're going to let Kathy close it out for us.
Wow. This is wonderful. I don't know. We need a part two. This is great. I can't say it enough. My name is Kathy Harris, for those of you that do not know who I am. I'm the interim chair for our Voting Access for All coalition. We came up with this idea. We didn't know how it was going to go, but this was awesome. I commend you all for what you're doing. And I hope you continue the work. I know you're going to continue the work because your heart is there. If your heart's not there, you wouldn't be doing what you're doing. So I commend you. Thank you very much for taking the time and being here with us tonight. Thank you, Jason, for being the moderator for this program. And again, there may be a part 2, so just, stand by. We'll reach out to you again because we definitely need to keep this going. And there's so many people out in the community that need to hear your stories and what you're doing. And maybe, I'm here in Grand Rapids, so I know we can share these stories over here in Grand Rapids and help the people over on this side of the state. But again, thank you. Thank you so much. And you all have a good night and continue the work. Thank you.
Amen.
Amen. Good to hear from everybody. Good to hear from you guys.
Absolutely.
Love you, Jason.
Y'all take care.
I'll talk to you soon, Smitty. Maybe we'll see
Okay.
maybe see somebody you guys next week up there. We'll get a camera crew up to Lansing. That'd be something too.
Amen.
We'll be there.
Good stuff. Maybe it'll be warm enough to get the hard top.